You're all being way too quiet. Okay. Looks like we may be ready to go. Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to the Board of Trustees meeting for the Utah Transit Authority today, Wednesday, June the 26th, 2019. We'd invite you to stand and join us in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with our safety first minute, and we have Ken Muhlestein. Hopefully, Ken, I said that correctly, but please feel free to correct me. I know who you are. I just don't ever say your last name.
So this week's safety message is on safe driving. This is we back up to our safety poster here. This one's safety poster. I actually find this one pretty creepy. I don't know who did that, but you don't have eyes in the back of your head, so always make sure to be aware of your surroundings and things going on around you. A good security and safety message. But this week's message is also on safe driving. And whenever you're behind the wheel of a vehicle, whether we're driving a UTA vehicle or our own personal vehicles, we always want to make driving our top concern. So focus on driving 100% of the time, put away the distractions, drive defensively, make sure and keep a 2-second following distance between you and the vehicle in front of you. The second I sent this message out, one of the assistant managers from bus called me up and said, "Wait, Ken, I thought it was 3-second following rule." I says, "Well, for the buses, we teach 3 seconds because they're traveling and they have a longer stopping distance. But when you're driving your personal vehicle, make sure and leave a good stopping distance. Avoid drowsy driving, especially on our vacations. You want to get up early and get where we're going, but we want to make sure we have plenty of time to do there, and we do so when we're awake." And then this is kind of a thing I've noticed for Utah where people don't like to use their signals a lot when they change lanes, but always make sure and use your signals to change lanes. Cause an accident or could upset those around you. And then if I could brag for a second on my daughter, the Utah Labor Commission does a safety calendar every year, and this month's June is a safety month. My daughter was selected as the champion artwork for the safety message, so to spark a vision of safety. So it was $500 for her for that message too. So
well, it sounds like safety is a family thing then. So which is great.
Yeah, appreciate you keeping safety at the forefront of this meeting. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I guess I have to start using my blinker now. Right. I love the element of surprise, but thank you. Next up is a public comment. Do we have anybody here from the public to comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move forward to our consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion on that agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And then next up is our agency report with Steve Meyer.
Good morning, Chair. One item I'd like to share with you. We've talked before about the need to help coordinate multiple users who provide transportation services for those who need health services or low income and things like that. How we've worked together with multiple agencies to coordinate access. Well, we were the recipient of an innovative coordinated access and mobility pilot program grant. We received a grant amount of $700,125, which was the second highest award amount in the country for this discretionary grant. So this was from FTA. We're partners with the Jacksonville Transit Authority in Florida and a group called Community Health IT, and they're a nonprofit facilitator for access for health services. And the project will create an electronic voucher system with a mobile app and payment system to reduce administrative costs and reduce potential waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. We're also partners with, we've got funding coming from the state, 25,000 FTA. We're using cobbling together with another grant of 100,000, UTA funds of 146,600, and in-kind services of 76,000. And then Jacksonville has contributed about $37,113 of in-kind services. Now they have some of this program already in place. They're able to monitor the outcomes, community health, of the health outcomes of the service, but they're wanting to team with us and working on the mobility side. So it's an exciting thing that we've talked about other programs in Utah County that we've helped facilitate and around our service area, and these are important things that we do to really help utilize all the mobility assets that are out there and get all the community agencies working together.
Steve, so we have the 250,000 from the state legislature.
Mhm.
Does it, is it something that will integrate in with that effort at some point, or do you have any sense of that?
I don't. Anybody? Oh, no, we don't know. So I think.
I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah,
on its own. I just wondered
Right.
if there's some down the road, you know, an opportunity to take the one and involve it in the other.
I think all of this really gets the communities and all the service entities that have transportation resources talking and working together better.
That'd be great.
That's my report.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Just, how long has Jacksonville been doing this project? Do you have
Not
some
aware
numbers?
of how long they've been in this. This group we're working with has been there for several years trying to, they facilitate within that community. They're around the Kennedy Space Center and in that area, and they help facilitate the healthcare processes. So they've really been focused on the healthcare outcomes. Did we get you as a person who had healthcare needs connected to the right services and report back what were the outcomes? Well, sometimes the gap in that is the transportation. I just can't make my appointment. I don't have a transportation means. So being able to coordinate in the community and provide those transportation resources.
I'm thinking back to my old job, but when you had to associate, you know, reimbursement to a particular grant, you know, depending on how the app, you know, evolves, and it might be a great tool because you could get on somebody else's transportation and bill it back to the sort of origin of the grant, and it would. And I think when we get into our coordinated mobility, it'll probably help facilitate sort of spreading, you know, making sure the right party gets reimbursed from the right source of funds, and which I know currently is a huge obstacle.
Right, and that's a big barrier to entry for people, agencies wanting to participate in this.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for that update. I think that was it, right, Steve? Yeah, okay. Next up is a resolution establishing the terms and conditions of employment for Executive Director Carolyn Gannott. And Carolyn, why don't you come forward if you would and just take any one of these chairs, and there's a little button on the base of your mic and it'll be on, you know, because there's a little light around the edge of the mic where it's the most important thing we'll teach you because everybody else has to stare at it, so we're just helping you have a leg up on everybody. But anyway, why don't you just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in UTA, and then we've had the pleasure of getting to know you, but I think everybody else is anxious to get to know you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to put my glasses on because I wrote a few notes. But anyways, I'm very honored and excited to actually be joining UTA. It's an organization that has accomplished so much, actually in a fairly short amount of time compared to some of the transit agencies in the country. And I really appreciate your confidence, the Board of Trustees' confidence, and my experience and ideas to lead UTA forward. I just want to say I'm coming from the San Jose area or Silicon Valley. I'm familiar a lot with where there's a lot of growth and the community's experiencing that, and how does a transit agency meet those growing needs in the population. And when I first came to Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, or what we call VTA, that area was, that agency had just been formed with a new board structure. It used to have a different board, the transit agency, and it came on board and it became a different kind of agency because it links with the congestion management program, which was integrating transportation and land use, really looking at mobility options to go forward and how does transit play a large key role in that. So I've been with VTA for many years, running a number of different areas, everything from major capital project delivery to planning to state good repair to asset management to grant management, marketing, customer service, real estate, TOD or transit-oriented development, joint development. There's very few areas I haven't touched within VTA or worked very closely with. And so I've been very blessed to be with VTA for 23 years and have had a number of opportunities that I've been able to actually face and actually take them on and be very successful in. That includes a number of ballot measures that we've gone after. We've run 4 ballot measure campaigns since I've been there. And those have all been successful ballot measures, bringing forward not just capital dollars, but operating dollars into our system. We also have, and also for capital delivery for other transportation type improvements like highway. We also have had the opportunity to work on large capital delivery. For 4 years, I managed the BART extension to San Jose, which was really building very strong relationships with the Federal Transit Administration, other transit agencies, our MPO in the region, the contracting community, as well as within our agency and getting us prepared to bring on a large investment that will change the way VTA will look for transit, because this will change everything as to how we link people to the region. And so that first phase of the project will open up hopefully by the end of the year. It's about $100 million under budget, so I'm really happy about that. And most recently, I've been heavily focused on state of good repair and looking at, we're about 25, VTA is 25 years old, very similar to UTA in terms of now you're starting to move from major capital expansion and starting to get ready for state of good repair over the next few years. That's really important to understand what your baseline conditions are and how you want to be prepared for that while you still serve the growth needs that are coming about, which is what I've been doing at VTA as well. And I think one of the most intriguing things about UTA as well is because it is in that growth mode, but we're also in the state of still very high technological innovations in the industry. So how do you be nimble enough to take advantage of that and use those to help serve existing needs and serve the growth that's going to happen? And I've enjoyed that experience at VTA, and I'm really going to look forward to doing that at UTA as well and helping this board meet its objectives.
Well, thank you. And I believe you have somebody with you today.
Oh, yes.
Do
My
you want to
husband.
introduce or?
My husband's here, Jeff Moore.
Okay, Jeff, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I think it's a very exciting time for us, and we're looking forward to becoming part of the community here.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. Let me look to my colleagues. Should we start with a motion and then take a time to make comments? Does that sound like a good approach?
Good. And with that, I am very excited to make this motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve R 2019-06-03, the resolution establishing the terms and conditions of employment for Executive Director Carolyn Gannott as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Second. Let me come to the board for discussion. Is there any comments or thoughts?
You know, for the last several months that we've been together as a board, we've been very concerned about the selection of an executive director that can provide continued stability and direction for the organization, the agency. And we've interviewed a number of people. It was pretty clear to us that the cream was rising to the top. And we're delighted, Carolyn, that you have agreed with us to join UTA. It's a pleasure to have you here. We look forward to your leadership and being colleagues with you as we work together to build UTA in the future. Welcome to UTA. thank you for accepting this offer.
And I just wanted to say that you have three extremely excited and very much looking forward to working with you individuals up here as the Board of Trustees. We could not be more excited to see how we're going to transition forward. And as Kent said, we had a lot of candidates, and so it was really exciting in a way to get all of this different perspective, but your background and everything else has really just been that, I think I told you yesterday, the icing and the cherry on top. And so thank you for joining us today.
Carolyn, I'd echo their comments. We've had the pleasure of working along with Steve the last few months, and I certainly knew predecessors, and you know, this is a shift for UTA. This is the first time we've had a director that hasn't come from within our ranks, and that's not a reflection of past individuals. I think because we kept an open mind as we went through that interview process, and by all standards, you rose to the top of those, and we're delighted to have you here. We're excited that you're willing to be part of this team, and we are excited about the future of the Utah Transit Authority, and are glad to have you there. And just on a personal note, when you're having a bad day, I have treats in my office on my table that you can come in and get anytime you want. So you always need those breaks to bring yourself back to normalcy. So just know that we're down the hall, and we want to be collaborative in accomplishing the things that need to be done for the agency. So welcome. With that, I'll ask for a roll call on the motion.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Trustee Millington,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Congratulations. We're just going to take a brief recess and just give folks a chance to congratulate Carolyn, and there may be others that have a few questions for her. So thanks, Carolyn. All right, I think we're good to go, and so we've returned from our recess, and next is our financial report, and Troy Bingham is here to. We know we'd get to the real knowledge anyway, Troy. So it's nice to have you here. There you go.
I appreciate the support. Bob is not able to show up today, so I am taking his place. So the monthly financials, there's a few questions that you guys have asked at previous board meetings that Bob wanted to include in this packet, so we'll go over that as we go through this. So this is for the month of May. This is the dashboard that you typically see each month that has both the monthly and the year-to-dates. There's some positives on the year-to-dates and a little bit of negatives on the monthlies. As you can see, sales tax is down for the month as compared to the budget. And we'll show a little bit more detail of year-over-year sales tax on the next few slides. But overall, year-to-date, it's only slightly down for the year. We did get the April in as of yesterday, and it was below what we budgeted, so these numbers will continue to show negative as we move forward through the next few months. Fair revenues are positive for the month, but overall slightly negative still, as you see it in year-to-date. And we'll show you a little bit more detail that you've asked, where that's coming from and how that's looking. And then operating expenses, it was both positive monthly and year-to-date. We're underspending what we actually budgeted. So by getting less revenues in and spending less, but then again, spending less money, you're still positive overall as an agency. The subsidy provider is a mixture of both those expense savings and ridership. So as you can see, ridership is for the month is down. When you have less riders, the subsidy provider goes up. So our subsidy provider did exceed our $5.40 that we budgeted. We're at $5.56 for the month. And then diesel prices have been relatively good for us, and we do show a slide later on about how diesel prices vary as a question that you guys have asked in the past. Moving on.
Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
Troy? Maybe it will be in a future slide. Obviously, we experience the same sales tax as everybody else. Is there any thought out there amongst, public agencies or even economists of why the sales tax is down or a little bit?
I don't really have too much of an insight on that. I think what Bob really wanted me to point out here is you see that red line that we show at the bottom, that it's dipping below that green average. That's a 6-month rolling average. So you can see that we're starting to lean towards less than projected sales growth over the last 6 months. But over year to date, if you go year over year, it's still positive. So it's a mixed bag of good news and bad news. Are we really heading towards a recession, or is it just a typical bump that you see every year or every summer? Yeah. So it's hard to say. I think if this continues at this rate, you might have to make bigger choices come the fall. But as of right now, it's just a mix of good and bad news.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? So moving on to sales tax. Again, last slide showed the budget to actual. This is a year over year. So showing all the localities are up from last year, but we budgeted more aggressively than what they're actually, that's why the budget is showing negative, less than budgeted. So, but overall, all the localities are up 6.2% overall, with the biggest, again, being Utah County, showing the biggest sales tax growth year over year. Moving on to the next slide. You've asked for more detail of fair revenues and what it looks like. I think the most important thing is to look at the total at the bottom. Year over year growth on revenues, our fair revenues is $642,000 to the good. I think overall, a lot of that's just, you'll see a lot of shifting into contracts in the mobile ticketing. Contracts, as companies sign up for their employees, they stop buying paper passes and they move over to contracts. Same thing with mobile ticketing. As people stop buying paper passes, mobile ticketing takes that option up as using it on your cell phone. So some are positive, some are negative. Again, as you make fair choices, these are the numbers that you should watch and use as a baseline over the next few months.
Do you have any sense of sort of what is our cost of mobile ticketing versus, say, a fare box processing aspect? I mean, is one cheaper for us than the other?
So I believe there's a fare discussion today.
Yeah, Monica's going to talk specifically to that for you today.
Sorry, I don't want to preempt her,
ahead,
so that'll be great. I just have wondered on, so that'll be great. I'll hold.
Troy's been sworn to secrecy not to
Divulge
divulge
it.
that.
She wants the
until
surprise that
Monica
still happens. So.
Can't steal her thunder.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Troy, I had a quick question
Yeah.
about the van pool revenue. Is that a trend, or is that just because, are more people utilizing van pool?
We do see about 30 new accounts created, individual accounts created each month. So yeah, we are seeing a slight growth, but there is people that are also dropping out of the van pool. But overall revenue is positive. So I think the amount of growth is exceeding the amount of people moving away from Vanpool. So, any more questions? All right, moving on to slide 5. These are the variance analysis. So overall, you'll see administration has a great $2.85 million savings, and that is mostly made up of the contingency that we budget in the executive director's department is still unused of $391,000. And then there's timing issues with both our legal department showing a $466,000 savings in administration, our risk, which we make those risk payments later in the fall. They're still showing $617,000 of savings. And our IT department, again, the timing on when software is renewed is throughout the year. So we're still showing a $1.15 million savings. So that number is made up of contingency, legal, and risk and IT altogether. The other is paratransit is also showing a positive $610,000. That's mostly fuel and purchase service timing. So we purchase services from United Way and MV Transit in our 2 outlying counties. Their timing on when they bill us and how quickly they bill us is a little bit off. So there's $564,000 of savings currently in the budget. But by the end of the year, that should come to closer to zero. The negatives that you're seeing in light rail are from wages and parts. They're $428,000 over on wages and $559,000 on parts. Again, timing wise of when those parts come in, and then typically light rail parts are more expensive than most parts outside of commuter rail. And then bus, you'll see the savings of $850,000. Most of that is fuel, and you'll see that throughout the slides as I go further. Moving on, the next one is the variance analysis by type. And again, warranty recovery, you would expect to see a negative there. That is us showing a credit for all of the parts that we send off due to warranty repairs. We expect to get back those funds if the part is deemed to be eligible for warranty recovery. You'll see the negative down in wages and benefits is mostly due to Salt Lake Central. Bus is $436,000 over, and light rail is $469,000 over. So services, that is up $230,000 is again due to external legal services. We typically budget about $1 million there. They've only spent about half of that year to date. And then IT and planning have savings of about $1.6 million together. Again, those are timing issues as those contracts get obligated and spent, that those funds will be spent out for services.
The Salt Lake Central bus overage, is that ramping up stuff? What causes that? I wouldn't think bus would be that cyclical.
So I guess that'd be a question for Lauren if he's here in the group, more than me.
I don't know. So wages are a little over in the Salt Lake Central bus area, and I just wondered if you knew what the cause of that was. I would think sort of in that bus category that it would be fairly consistent.
Yeah, I would expect that as we've been bringing new people on for Salt Lake City service, so obviously we have to build up. So we've been bringing people in, training them, and of course we bring them on staff and they're being paid at that point.
I see.
And so, yeah, it's just gearing up for the new Salt Lake City service.
Okay.
And that budget adjustment doesn't go until June, so that would be a perfect
So
example.
there's just a timing
Issue with that.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, and then our last and final slide, slide 7, or actually second to the last, is historical fuel prices. As you can see, you've had questions about what fuel looks like and how we budget for that. Our budget, as you saw for diesel, is $2.50, I'm sorry, for diesel. We budget $1.16 for CNG and $2.34 for unleaded. And you can see those price variations typically follow the summer, fall, winter pattern, and then how we project it. But we're overall showing fuel savings in both unleaded and diesel right now, and CNG is coming in exactly as expected. So as we talk more about fuel hedging and things like that, this is the graph that we would use for you. All right, and then the last one is more detailed questions you guys have had about ridership. This is deeper than just mode, it's more mode and geographics. So as you can see, Salt Lake Bus is down. That's typically what we see each month, and also light rail is down from previous year over year. But what we see growth is in Timpanogos, where the new UBX route is, and commuter rail continue to show growth month after month. So overall, that gives us a positive of 242,000 more rides this year. But we'll see as we go into summer when UVX as less of a service if these numbers continue to show these kind of growth patterns.
We, on UVX, we have noticed, because we're looking at that ridership pretty carefully down in Utah County, the numbers that you show year to date, reflect the time when both schools were fully operational, and we were doing about 10,000 a day. We did notice, however, that in the month of May, we only reduced to about 7,000 a day. So it's still almost triple what was on our buses down there before UVX. So it's still doing quite well. We'll take a look at that in June, of course, here next week, and we may have a little different number, but it was holding pretty well in May, and we're looking at that very carefully to see what happens in June. But it didn't dip quite as far as we thought it might with both schools being out.
You're right, June and July will be the
Those would be the telling months.
telling months, and then
Yeah.
you'll have an August compared to last August when we actually started service, so you'll be able to see what the actual growth is continuing.
Do we think, and I would guess, we had the big sort of disruption when we did the half Grand Union there on Main Street, 4 South during May. Would these numbers reflect sort of folks who might have decided to take a pass during that month?
Yeah, they had to do quite a bit of adjustment because you could have seen some increase in boardings because people are having to transfer. So they did make those adjustments. So I think you see a little bit of reduction due to that. But, this overall, we're mirroring what we're seeing around the country. Slight dip around 2% or so around the country. So thankful for UVX. We have the service choices that'll help us influence what we do. The initiation of the Salt Lake City service in August. So trying to get smarter about our routes, where we're putting service, the type of service we're going to be putting in. So I think we're going to keep adjusting and trying to improve the efficiency and the availability, the desirability for people to use our service.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the extra slides. They're very helpful that way.
Right, we'll try to continue to give you what you need.
All right. Thanks, Troy. Next up are contracts, disbursements, and grants. And first up is a pre-procurement. Eddie Cummings, and in regards to, you say that Delner parts overhaul and quarter half-life. You'll have to explain what that means.
Great. So good morning. I have Kyle Stockley with me today. He is the project manager for the light rail overhaul program. We have 2 pre-procurements today. This particular procurement is to overhaul the Delner couplers for 77 of our S70 light rail vehicles. This is part of the light rail overhaul program. And as you know, the coupler is the mechanical and electrical connection between light rail vehicles that allows us to add and remove train cars. This contract is for parts only and will include kits of 27 individual parts that will be used to rebuild the couplers. The rebuild process will be completed in-house by UTA Light Rail Vehicle Mechanics. The estimated cost for this procurement is $1,053,146. Any questions?
Is this pretty much standard in terms of the timelines that you anticipated replacing these?
Yes.
Or overhauling them?
Yes.
So we're pretty much on point on that?
Yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's a little bit of a typo on here. This isn't, all these vehicles are all the same age, so this is actually the quarter life.
Quarter life, correct.
It's not quarter/half. These vehicles are all the same age, so it's just quarter life.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And is this one of those joys where you get to order it from one company and one company only, or are there other competitors in the coupler industry?
We hope to find other competitors, but with the light rail industry, it's a really small group, so we do actually try to find anybody who could bid on this and make sure the quality of the parts meet our expectations, so.
Okay. All right. Any questions on this? Okay. And then the next one is the pantograph overhaul.
This procurement is to overhaul the pantographs on all 117 light rail vehicles as part of our overhaul program. The pantograph is that contact mechanism that comes up above the train, makes contact with the wire that powers the train. This procurement is for parts only and will include kits of 56 individual parts required to complete the overhaul. The rebuild process will be completed in-house by UTA Light Rail Vehicle Maintenance Mechanics, and the estimated cost of this contract is $785,591.
And one question I have is, are you buying enough of these where you get some discounts for the quantity? I mean, especially if you're going into the overhaul process.
Absolutely, and in fact, by putting the one contract together, we can stagger the actual receipt of the parts, but we get the quantity discount up front.
Okay.
We expect to see substantial savings on this particular procurement.
Okay. Any questions?
I just had a question. Where are you at in the overhaul for the entire fleet? Are you just doing it because this is their shelf life on these 56 vehicles, or is it eventually going to go to others, or are you at the tail end of that?
So on the second pre-procurement, we're talking about all light rail vehicles, so we'll be rebuilding the pantographs on all 117 vehicles. On the previous one, you are correct, there were 77 of those. And so as we mentioned before, kind of as we go through, and Kyle can speak to this a little bit more, but our rebuild program is kind of a component rebuild. So rather than taking one train down and just keeping it for months and months to do the rebuild, we're rebuilding components and going through the fleet as time allows.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks for that update. Appreciate
Thank you.
your work on it. Thanks, Kyle. Next item is our discussion on fares. And Monica, I understand you have all the information I've wanted to hear, so.
My name is Monica Morton, and I'm the Fares Director. I'm glad to be with you again, even though it took a little longer than planned. We have a lot of great information this morning. As you'll remember from the last time I was here, I shared 3 key elements to a fare system: policy, pricing, and payment. Several policy documents are in place now based on previous board and executive decisions over the years. With new governance and legislative requirements, we are working on re-evaluating and updating fare policy under your leadership. Pricing has a lot of moving parts, and it is important to understand current pricing because it is fundamental to future decisions. So today my presentation has 2 parts. The first part will cover pricing for public fare rates and reduced fare contracts. And the second part will be a fares follow-up to the questions that you had last time. And Chair Christensen and I can follow up on your question as well about mobile ticketing at that time. So this presentation covers a lot of information. Feel free to have me clarify anything you'd like as I go throughout the slides. The key components of a pricing structure consist of a base fare, discounts, free fares, special pricing, and transfers. I will go over all of them today with the exception of transfers. The base fare rate is set by the Board of Trustees. It was approved in Resolution 2011-0302 in 2011. So that resolution references a public fare table, and we included a copy of that in the board packet. I would also like to mention our current fare collection policy and our SOP flowchart for fare policy. They direct the steps for fare adjustments. However, there have not been any fare adjustments since this policy was adopted. The current resolution approved 3 fare increases in 2011, and the last one was in 2013. Here is the base fare pricing matrix, and I showed that last time I was here. Important to note that base fare is differentiated by service, levels, and by modes. And then by modes, fare is either flat or station-based, so ranging from $2.50 to $5.50. Front runner base fare of $2.50, and that is station-based at 60 cents per fare. Next, I'll go over discounts. They are either mandatory or voluntary, and when applied, they deduct.
Ask one question back on the express
Yes,
bus.
you may.
So is that really, so it's considerably more than a typical bus then?
It is. It's longer distances and no stops, and so we are charging a premium price for that.
Okay. Unless I guess they have a pass that covers premium pricing.
It would, yes, our monthly pass would include that.
Yeah,
So they can either pay per trip, assuming it was only a few. They could also use our Fair Pay card and just put funds to it.
okay.
Okay, so discounts, mandatory or voluntary, they deduct a certain percentage off basic fare products. So discounts are included in the improved public rate table from 2011. But they're also referenced in Resolution 2018-06-07. This resolution was approved last year as part of new legislative requirements for reduced fare contracts. And I'll summarize the discounts for you. So seniors, disabled, and Medicare card holders get 50% off, and that's required by the FTA. Youth get a 25% discount, and if you buy a 10-pack of tokens, we discount that by 10%. We also have the Fair Pay card. That's an electronic fare media that you can load funds onto in advance for any dollar amount and tap that as you ride. So when riders pay with this card, they receive an automatic discount of 20% off the base fare rates or 40% off local bus. And to give you a little background, this discount was initiated when Fair Pay first launched at the end of 2013, and that was a way to incentivize riders to move to an electronic fare media. So homeless service providers receive a 50% discount when they distribute fare to the homeless for free, and they can't charge for that, and this is managed through a reduced fare contract and only applies to the monthly pass, tokens, and day passes. The co-op pass program, it's not being actively marketed anymore because the new corporate pass programs replaced this product, and those programs started in 2016. I'll discuss those a little bit later, but we do have a few partners that are still on this program. And UTA discounts the premium and regular paper monthly passes. 20% off, and then we require the partner to subsidize 30%, so the employee pays no more than half the cost. And the low income program, it's only offered to Horizon cardholders, and that offers 25% off the adult paper monthly pass. Now I'll address free fares. Resolution 2018-06-07, that governs UTA's travel training program. So it was originally known as the Training Token Agreement, but it has grown over time. Electronic fare cards are used as the fare media now, not tokens. The program is available to educational institutions or social service organizations. It serves refugees, disabled, or elderly by providing them with free passes for training purposes. Training helps them to independently use UTA's fixed route services, and often they become lifelong users. And then 2 additional corporate policies that are in place that govern free fare for market segments or groups, and the distribution of complimentary passes.
Who falls in the free?
So in our groups, we have children 5 and under. We have those that require assistance. So we have sworn police officers, firefighters, and trying to think who else is within that policy. The free fare zone is part of that policy. We have the transit passes for employees and retirees. We have a personal care attendant riding with a customer with a disability, and sworn peace officers and firefighters, either in or out of uniform. And that is the list right now. And the last section that I want to cover in part 1 is a little bit more detail, but this is our special pricing. So the first column includes period passes, special products, and prepaid fare. They are identified in the public rate table, passed in 2011. And then we have pilots, special programs, and bulk fare purchases, which are governed by Resolution 2018-0607. And I'll go through each one of these with you now. Period pass products. So they're based on a certain time period. The rider can take unlimited trips during that time. And pricing is calculated from an equivalent number of trips multiplied by the base fare rate. So the day pass, it's 2.5 trips at the regular base fare rate of $250. The regular monthly pass is 33.5 trips at the regular base fare of $250. And the premium monthly pass is the equivalent of 36 trips at the express bus base fare rate of $550. Special priced products offer a savings to encourage riderships by a certain market segment or group, and currently the group pass is the only special priced product. It was originally the family round trip pass, but 4 riders can ride all day on that for $15, and they can ride both regular and premium services. And prepaid fare products, these give the rider an opportunity to pay for an exact quantity of trips in advance. Typically at the base fare rate, although sometimes there is a small savings, like I mentioned earlier with the token 10 pack, and that would be 10% discount for that pre-purchase. These fares here on this slide were approved by the Board of Trustees as part of the public fare rate table, as I mentioned earlier.
If you have a fare pay card, can you do a day pass off of that?
No, not at this time.
You're on a single ride.
Fare pay are single rides. Pilots and promotions, they require special pricing. The executive director can approve pilots and promotions as stated in the resolution, but must review them with the board chair. UTA has a few special programs in place. So there are partnerships with the state of Utah Department of Health and also the Department of Human Services. So the Medicaid Punch Pass is a monthly paper punch pass. And that allows riders to travel to and from medical appointments. We also have a program with the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. They pay for electronic passes as part of a reduced fare contract. Another program is a partnership with the U of U for transit to and from football games and other ticketed events. And we also have a special program for paratransit riders. Our Freedom Access Pass, they can ride fixed route and rail at no cost instead of taking paratransit. And last are bulk fare purchases. This is a set of pass programs that UTA administers with our partners. And the pricing criteria is part of the resolution, so I'll go over bulk fare pass programs with you now. There are a few elements within the pass programs that vary by contract. I'll briefly mention a few things about them going left to right. The contract language for the majority of our partners is standard, and we use the same contract for all of them. The partner is not allowed to make any changes to the wording, although sometimes they request slight modifications. When we have large bulk purchases, we're more flexible and customize the contract with the wording as required. Sometimes the contract arrangement is unique, or we have specific requests from their legal department that they want to see included in the contract. The contract length, that varies. A lot of them are calendar year. We do have some as high as 10 years. Fare media is mostly electronic, but we do have some paper passes and tokens that are being used. The contract also specifies the quantity of passes, and that helps our partners manage the electronic cards. They're required to shut those cards off if the participant no longer qualifies. An example of that would be if an employee moves or if a student graduates from school or does not attend anymore. Pricing structure, discounted special pricing or free. I'm going over special pricing now. And the last column, partnership group. I introduced those partnership groups in the last slide, but we have several partnerships, as you saw, from these various groups. Although they have some similarities, their needs are actually quite different, and so therefore some partnership groups require special pricing, and I'll show you those now. Starting with our educational programs. So special pricing for educational partners includes 2 educational programs, our Paper Trip and our Ed Pass. The Paper Trip program allows partners to pay for services monthly. They pay per trip. The Paper Trip program uses tap data to calculate the amount due using the base fare rate for each trip taken, and a 25% discount is applied to the monthly invoice. Our Ed Pass program requires educational institutions to purchase transit passes for 100% of their student body. Pricing for these agreements are specific to each school's unique characteristics. Those characteristics include things like service coverage, service frequency, rider usage, fare media, and parking circumstances, to name a few. A pricing analysis is performed using electronic data, if it's available, and ridership estimates. And the resolution guides the pricing of educational agreements based on the average fare per boarding within a target range of $1 to $1.60.
Monica, I had a quick question.
Yes.
When you, on the Ed Pass, it says must purchase for 100% of the population. Is that full and part-time students or just full-time?
It varies by contract, but at a minimum full-time. We do have contracts that do include part-time as well. Special pricing for our corporate partners include our Eco Standard and Eco Custom Pass programs. So the majority of our partners do participate in our Standard Pass programs. Our large partners are purchasing higher quantities, and those are custom agreements. Our standard programs include 4 options that you can see on the slide, in addition to Ride Van Plus, and these corporate options fit the needs of our partner circumstances. Pricing for these programs is based on usage from ridership data that we collect electronically. The Ride Van Plus program, that's a first and last mile solution for employers and employees. This will include an annual pass and a van for up to 10 miles from the transit location. Each rider pays $50 a month, and then they also pay $260 for the cost of the van.
So the 260 is the annual portion of that cost?
No, that's the monthly.
It's monthly as well, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Our EcoPass programs include agreements for ski services, eco discounts for nonprofit agencies, and paper trip agreements. We have 3 main pricing arrangements for ski. The Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon ski resorts, along with Salt Lake Visitors Bureau, pay for each trip at the end of the month based on actual usage, plus a 20% discount off the premium ski bus fare rate of $450. The Park City resorts pay for each trip based on actual usage at the base fare rate with no discount. And the Ogden Ski Resorts, city and county, pay 40% of the actual operating costs. The nonprofit agreements are 25% off of our eco programs that you see above, but just the annual select and annual preferred. And some of our paper trip agreements are calculated on actual usage at the base fare rate with a maximum discount of 20% off. A few other programs that I'll mention: our Ticket is Fair program, that's for bulk purchases of transit to and from events. It allows the ticket holder to use their ticket as valid fare media for UTA Bus, Frontrunner, and Track services. The ticket is only valid for the date printed on the ticket, and the pricing is 50 cents per ticket sold prior to the event. The residential pass program, that is similar to our eco programs. The difference is that the 100% requirement is for all residents in the complex, stating it's 1 pass per unit minimum. So if they have 100 in their complex, 100 different units, we would require them to purchase a minimum of 100 passes, although they would be able to purchase more. And the government program, so that also requires 100% participation and applies solely to Utah. So their program started in 2015 and was priced at that time using ridership projections and prior contracted rates. And before moving on to the second part of my presentation, I want to emphasize that UTA is privileged to establish and maintain an effective fare system as it relates to policy, pricing, and payment. Pricing is an important part of the policy, which is why we went over it today. If there are no additional questions on pricing, I will move on to the second part of my presentation.
Go ahead.
I had a quick question on the residential portion of that. Is there a reason that we require 100% participation of a residential unit or multi-unit or dwelling of some kind? And what was the purpose of that?
Well, our 100% participation, and it would depend on the rate that we offer. Right now, that rate to corporations is because we know that in large purchases, not 100% is going to use it, which is how we're able to keep the cost down in that scenario. So we could scale back and not require 100%, just to keep pricing equitable to our other programs. We would need to charge a higher price for it. So that option could be available, and we could look at repricing it that makes more sense for the residential community. You're welcome.
And Monica, do you, this may be a hard question to answer, but it strikes me like some of these are a little more regressive than others, meaning, if somebody pays fare box and they're a little lower income but didn't fit one of the other categories, I mean, they could conceivably paying a disproportionate share compared to, say, a pass holder. And that's not like somebody's intentionally trying to stick it to them, but is there any sort of analysis sort of collectively on sort of that equity issue amongst pass holders, and would there be motivation for us to shift people into one category, one sort of medium of use over another? And maybe that's in your second part or soon to be presented
Yeah.
kind of thing. And
No, there is definitely a lot of room for improvement when we look at equity in these contracts and in this pricing, which is why we're all gathered here today.
sure.
So I do foresee shifts that will improve that. And I will talk a little bit about, moving into different media types in the second part, but there are obviously different characteristics and things that set the groups apart, but what we're trying to do is establish criteria that would guide those decisions and make them more equitable.
Sure. Yeah, and this is definitely not a blame. I just think
Yeah.
if we look through it and say, there's some goals and pathways to bringing those in alignment somehow. I was going to joke that nobody gets out of the room unless they can quote your fare schedule, but
There'll be a
you'd be the
quiz.
only one that gets to leave. So anyway, but somewhere we have to get it to be a little more simple.
Chair, I think that's an important discussion for this board to have, because it's a really, what is your philosophy going forward? We've tried with the different fare elements to make it as equitable as we can.
Sure.
Like the fair pay card, there are locations, if you don't have access to a computer, you could say, well, that's a barrier to loading money onto it. Some people just don't like to, or may not have a credit card that they can, or a means to transfer money into that. So you can go to the stores, and there's locations where you can reload your card. So we look at that, and then the major pass programs for companies and major residential developments, and that it's a philosophy. We're spreading that 100% participation, but not everybody's going to participate. So your pricing's based on 100%, but you realize that not everybody's going to ride. So we try to look at then your price per ride. What are you generating in fare revenue? And as you could see in our financial report, while our ridership is down, fare revenue's up. And that's because of these past programs and the contracts we've been able to implement. We're still seeing that up where we need it to be. So I think you need to examine all of these, and we can help with that discussion. And try to find that comfort that we're providing an equitable system.
And this is just really an aside, but yesterday in our Board of Chambers retreat, suburban, or not suburban, but City Creek Reserve made the comment, once they open up their new tower on 95 South State, in essence, about 1,400 of their parking stalls go away in the sense that they're obligated to the 4,000 occupants of the building, and stalls that sort of other people have been relying on. And so we could get some new customers about the time that building comes on, because I think it's going to be a lot easier for them to offer a transit pass than a parking stall somewhere.
And that's the value proposition we're trying to demonstrate to a developer, to an office complex like that. You save money in your initial build. You can justify to a city in your building permitting process that you can have a lower parking ratio. You save on that upfront capital cost and the ongoing operation and maintenance of that parking garage by providing your employees those passes.
Yeah.
I'll just make a couple more comments. It's really exciting to hear everyone shifting to programs and fare, either because of parking or other circumstances, and we're solving for that, but the challenge is being able to accommodate those needs within the parameters of policy that we set. And then just one comment about the analysis and data. So we've done a lot of analysis. We have a lot of data, and it's so great. There's not enough time in the day to analyze everything we want. However, now that we have a dedicated department and some dedicated analysis, we will be able to put before you a lot of data and a lot more data, and look at things that either we haven't looked at or that we want to look at in more detail. So that's exciting too, just because I like data. Okay, so going on now to answer quickly the remaining questions that you had from my last presentation, speaking to the cost of collection a little bit more. So for several years, UTA has been analyzing costs associated with the fare system, and a model was developed and is being used as a tool to help the agency make important decisions regarding fares. Here is the framework as it exists now, simply, identifying the costs in those and expense-related accounts, establishing the percentage of fare, assigning it into different buckets. We don't have it assigned, as you can see on number 3. It's just electronic fare collection. It isn't mobile ticketing. 4, allocate the expense amount to each category. Some of those expenses overlapped, especially in the shared overhead category when you talk about things like customer service. We allocate passenger fare revenue to those categories and allocate shared overhead and calculate the cost of collection. Some of the expenses, and not all of them by any means, but if we say, how much does it cost? Our ticket vending machines, we have credit card fees, software support, machine parts, same with electronic collection. Although electronic collection does tack on vendor fees, and so typically you will see electronic collection, including mobile ticketing, higher priced fare media because of those vendor fees. A couple of our vendors being NCOM for the FarePay card and Passport for mobile ticketing. Paper, then we have things like retail commission, printing of the passes, so that those costs, aside from something like salary or smaller, and bus fare box, again, salary, armored car, bank fees. Not the entire list, but just to give you an idea of some of the expenses that fall into those categories. So the cost of collection, then the actual percentage is here. You're looking, the red line is just expenses, and the tan line, or whatever color that line is on your screen, includes operational and capital costs. We're at 24% in 2017. That has trended upward a little. We have not done 2018, although now that the CAFR is finalized, we will go in and perform an analysis on 2018. I do expect, though, that with that analysis, that some of the methodology and the analysis tool will shift, and hopefully we'll be able to improve that tool a little bit more. And then I broke out for you the cost of collection within the 4 categories. Again, not splitting out mobile ticketing, that is rolled into EFC, but EFC is currently at 13.1%. Bus fare box and paper both landed at about 1.8, and ticket vending machine being 7%. Again, that having credit card fees tacked onto it. Are there any other questions I can try to answer on cost of
So
collection?
the credit card fees are included in that 13%?
For both TVM and EFC, correct there.
Okay.
I had a question on could you go back to one more? Thank you. Which of these, do you have a percentage of which we currently collect on? Like, for instance, Farebox, how much of a percentage as a whole is that utilized versus, say, paper, electronic, or TVM?
I do, just not here with me. And I don't dare quote it off the top of my head, but we do have a graph, and I don't have it with me. I thought about bringing the prior presentation, but we can share those amounts. We have split that out so we know how much revenue is collected within each of those, which I believe was your question, correct? Okay.
Yeah, and do you have a sense of how sort of those percentages line up to the industry, like in normal?
I don't. I have not lined them up, although we do have some benchmarking data that we can look to line them up with. Everyone treats their cost of collection analysis different, and so it's really hard to line those up, but there are several benchmarks that we could try to do that with.
And where I'm thinking or going is, as we look at the policies and stuff, if there is a cost of collection that just really makes a lot more sense long term, and sort of overhead of collection. When we want to also think about the policy in that context as well. I mean, you don't want it to drive it, but on the other hand, if there's a method that just is ridiculously high in that category, you would pause and say, even if you offer it, you're not going to steer your new customers in that direction and somehow work it out of the system at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, it's extremely important, especially as we look to different fare media and all the advancements in technology, and making that decision, do we invest more in technology? And if so, what will that cost? And are we willing to assume that cost or not? And at what expense? EFC, speaking, to your point, Chair Holbrook, about what percentage, so about 38 to 42% of our revenue does come from our electronic cards. So we do see a larger expense associated with that, but at the same time we do bring in a lot of our revenue with that fare media. So I appreciate those comments.
So you think about with the electronic fare media, the thought was, well, let's eliminate a barrier to entry and make it convenient. Now it's much quicker to board a bus and tap that card versus try to find correct change, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's often what we hear. They make that easy, even make it just $2 or $3. Well, more people talk about $2 rather than $3, but make it just a straight amount where it's easy for people to pull out 2 bills. And then there's just time to slide those bills in. So you think about that, and then, but if we paid for our electronic fare cards with cash, we'd eliminate the credit card portion of it. But there's that convenience to using the credit card as well.
Yeah.
But there's certainly, as you saw, there's significant fees associated with credit card payment. So we're trying to weigh that. What's convenient for our passengers? What's convenient for us? What speeds the boarding? As you saw with our EFC program earlier this year, building our own software saves significant amount of money towards that system. So we are looking at at how we're doing business and are there ways to improve that process. We I think, need to continue to look at ways with the credit cards and those payment strategies, how we can make that as cost effective as possible. That's not an insignificant dollar amount for fare collection.
No.
You know, you look at that, and that's a lot of overhead off the top, and we want to try to minimize that, but we recognize, you know, in the grand policy of things, you know, where does fares fit as part of our revenue?
Okay, other questions? Because I have a slide for you, Trustee Millington. And this is our paper pass sales. So if you remember the fare poster that we showed, the top row were all of our monthly paper passes. So currently 60% of those are from our adult pass sales. We sell about 3,900 of those a month, and then the next category down would be the reduced fare sticker, about 1,000 of those a month. And then the following three categories, which are pretty equal to one another, the youth, the premium, and the senior, are approximately 400 to 500 a month. So we have low ticket volume on some of the others. And my final slide provides ticket volume, Trustee Holbrook, to help answer your question about, well, you know, how many passes do we see paper, and not talking about the regular passes, but paper, electronic cards. Our ticket vending machine usage, we have about 175,000 to 185,000 tickets sold on a monthly basis. That could equate into about 204,000 trips. So looking at EFC then, and this does include fare pay, we have about 70 to 80,000 passes tapped a month. And, you know, we can't compare that directly to TVM because we don't know the repeat users. But looking at fare pay, it's about 18,000 passes tapped a month. And we do need to distinguish on electronic cards the difference between tapped and active, because we have several more cards active than are tapped. Active just means you'll get a green light if you tap it, and those cards that are turned on vary. We have about 300,000 in any given month to as many as 600,000. Those would, of course, the higher volume would be during the months where either school is in session. We have several ski passes turned on during that period as well. And so, again, a wide range of active passes. And then EFC trips in comparison to ticket vending machine tickets, we have anywhere around, you know, 900,000 trips at high with EFC compared to around 200,000 trips with TVM. So again, the bulk of the ticket volume is coming from our electronic cards. So this concludes our time together for now. The next action item, though, is to draft a board fare policy and obtain approval after your review and feedback is accounted for. And under your continued guidance, executive team support, and recommendations from my department, I'm excited to see our progress in strengthening UTA's fare system.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Monica today?
Thank you.
Well, we'll look forward to the ongoing conversation, and so thank you for an additional piece on it.
Thank you.
So, thanks. That brings us to the beloved other business, which is our next meeting. We won't be meeting next week because of the 4th of July, and so our next meeting is slated for July the 10th at 9 a.m. Seeing no other business, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.